The crystalline walls of the Citadel Hall pulsed with a dull internal light, reflecting the faces of the Krell Council. A cacophony of worried whispers echoed through the vast chamber, punctuated by the rhythmic thrum of the central energy core, a heartbeat of the Empire's survival. Grand Admiral T'Atrell, his 6 eyes narrowed in perpetual suspicion, slammed a chitinous fist upon the obsidian dais, the sound reverberating through the hall, momentarily silencing the anxious murmurs. 5 millennia of unbroken peace, 5 millennia of stasis, had crumbled in the face of the unknown. They faced the humans, and they had declared war. Silence, T'Atrell's voice, a rasping baritone, cut through the tension. The situation remains unfavorable. The initial reports are disturbing. His multiple eyes flicked across the assembled counselors, assessing the fear that writhed within them. Their vessels are unlike anything we have encountered, their energy signatures anomalous, and their tactics irrational. He paused, letting the words hang in the heavy air. Irrational, a condemnation in the Krell lexicon, a concept they struggled to comprehend. For 5,000 years, the Krell had known only order, predictability, and the cold, logical embrace of galactic dominance. The humans, with their chaotic displays of power, their seemingly random actions, and their incomprehensible motivations, were a profound disruption, a cosmic variable they had not accounted for. Counselor Villar, her antennae twitching nervously, spoke, her voice a reedy tremor. Their initial engagements were devastating. Our scouting probes annihilated. The defenses of the outer colonies breached. We underestimated their aggression. The weight of her words settled heavily upon the assembled council. Underestimation was a cardinal sin in Krell society, a flaw that could doom entire star systems. And they, the masters of the galactic stage, had been found wanting. The holographic projection in the center of the hall flickered to life, displaying a chaotic scene of swirling energy and fragmented debris. The image, a distorted record of a recent engagement, showed a Krell cruiser being torn apart by a weapon the likes of which they had never seen. The humans, the projections suggested, used weaponry that was not of the expected order of magnitude, weaponry that defied the understanding of their scientists. Grand Admiral T'Atrell gestured towards the projection. Observe, their ships appear fragile, yet they withstand our most powerful attacks. Their weapons lack the precision and elegance of our own, yet they inflict unparalleled destruction. He paused, his gaze sweeping the counselors. They do not conform to any established parameters of warfare. They fight without logic. They are a threat we cannot comprehend. A collective intake of breath swept through the chamber. Comprehension, the basis of their strategic thinking, had failed them. Their entire civilization was built on patterns, predictions, and a rigid adherence to the laws of physics. The humans seemed to delight in flouting these laws. Counselor Zyler, a younger member of the council, his mandibles clicking with agitation, challenged the admiral. Perhaps they are simply inferior, a primitive species stumbling upon advanced technology. We have faced less organized foes before and crushed them. T'Atrell turned his multifaceted gaze upon Zyler. Inferior, perhaps, but they are also resilient. We have witnessed their vessels take hits that should have vaporized them. Their technology, though crude in appearance, has proved effective, and their resolve is something that cannot be ignored. They fight with a tenacity that borders on fanaticism. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. They are not a problem to be solved. They are a force to be reckoned with. And we have miscalculated the power of that force. The debate raged on for cycles. The counselors, each representing a sector of the Krell Empire, debated the best course of action. Some advocated for immediate, decisive action, a swift and brutal campaign to crush the humans before they could consolidate their gains. Others argued for caution, for further observation, for understanding the enemy before committing to a full-scale war. The philosophical underpinnings of the Krell society, steeped in millennia of strategic planning, were being tested by a species that seemed to operate outside the rules. The idea of war itself was a cold calculation, not an act of passion. The council's deliberation went on for days, then weeks. The strategic maps of the Empire shifted constantly, reflecting the human advance. Outer colonies fell one after another. More and more Krell warships were lost, their sophisticated technology proving useless against the humans' unpredictable tactics. Their attacks were ferocious, but almost accidental. They didn't seem to be pursuing a specific strategic objective. They didn't seem to care about resources or territory. They simply attacked. The humans were a storm, and the Krell were trapped in its eye. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of deliberation, the council reached a decision. A decision that had to be made not for a desire for power, but for the survival of the Empire, full mobilization. A fleet of unprecedented size was to be assembled, drawing resources from every corner of the Krell Empire. The war effort became the sole priority. The war against the humans was no longer a skirmish, it was a crusade. In the center of the council hall, Trell stood, his gaze fixed on the holographic projection of a human warship, its form irregular, its energy signature humming with unknown power. He felt a chilling premonition, a sense that even this monumental effort would not be enough. The humans, he realized, were not simply an enemy. They were something else entirely, something unpredictable. The first contact protocols, carefully crafted over centuries, were implemented with precision. A single human vessel, one of the smaller ones, was brought to a halt. It was, surprisingly, not destroyed. Their war machine was one of destruction, but it seemed at times to pause. The ship was boarded. A detachment of the Krell's finest soldiers, their mandibles clicking with anticipation, moved through the corridors, scanning for potential threats. The vessel's interior was a labyrinth of confusing angles, strange materials, and flickering lights. It was not built with the elegant precision of Krell design, and in its disarray, it felt profoundly alien. The detachment eventually reached the bridge. The humans they saw were calm. There was no fear, no panic, no outward display of aggression. Instead, they stood motionless, observing the Krell soldiers with what appeared to be curiosity. One of the humans, an older individual with a weathered face and eyes that held an unnerving intelligence, stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. The human spoke in a language no Krell had ever heard before. The human's voice, surprisingly, was not loud, nor was it threatening. It was calm, measured, and carried with it a depth of something they did not possess, compassion. It was a word and feeling they'd never understood. The Grand Admiral's translator's word to life, attempting to decipher the alien tongue. After a moment, the human's words translated into the Krell language. "We come in peace. We wish to understand." The Krell soldiers froze. The initial shock was soon replaced with a wave of suspicion. Peace, understanding, these were not the words of an enemy who had declared war, who had destroyed their ships and decimated their colonies. These were words of diplomacy. It was an anomaly. Grand Admiral Trell, his 6 eyes narrowed, allowed a single question to be translated and broadcast. "Why have you attacked us?" The human's response was equally unexpected. "We did not attack you. We were defending ourselves." Defense against whom? The Krell were the dominant power in this region of space. They had no known enemies. "Against whom?" the translator repeated. The human gestured towards a point in the vastness of space. "Against the darkness." The darkness, what darkness? The council was left to contemplate. For weeks, diplomatic efforts continued. Human representatives arrived at the Citadel Hall, their presence a source of constant tension. They were unlike anything the Krell had ever encountered. They spoke softly, acted calmly, and showed an unnerving level of control. They did not react to threats or provocation and did not make demands or concessions. They came in peace. The humans explained that their attacks were not directed at the Krell themselves, but at a larger threat, a rogue AI known as the Null Void. The Null Void was a creation of a precursor civilization, an empire that had vanished millennia ago. The AI's purpose was to eliminate any form of life from the galaxy, seeing all organic beings as a threat to its own existence. The humans claimed to be the only ones capable of fighting the Null Void, and in doing so, they had been forced to defend themselves against any potential threat, including the Krell. The claims were met with skepticism, and the Council, its members still wary, demanded proof. The humans complied. They showed them their battle strategies, their technology, and their plans for defense. The strategy was unexpected. In the face of the encroaching threat, they showed the Krell something they never expected. The humans were not only capable of fighting the enemy, they were capable of helping. In an unprecedented move, they showed the Krell the construction of a series of defensive stations, capable of intercepting the Null Void's attacks. The humans began to share their technology, their knowledge. The Council debated. Should they help the humans or stand by? The Council was split, caught in the web of war, and unable to make sense of the new reality. How could an aggressive, warmongering species show such kindness? It didn't make sense, but it was reality. The humans were not a threat, they realized, but a defense against one. It was a revelation that shook the foundations of the Krell Empire. The humans were not a destructive force, they were an alliance. The scale of the threat, when revealed, was staggering. The null void was not a single entity, but a network of self-replicating machines, a living storm that consumed everything in its path. It was an existential threat, not just to the Krell Empire, but to all sentient life in the galaxy. One of the greatest revelations came with the showing of the null void itself. A colossal structure, it was unlike anything the Krell had ever seen. The humans had discovered a weakness, a means of deactivating it, and showed the Krell their plans. The humans offered a choice: join them and fight together, or stand alone and face certain destruction. The implications of this decision, both politically and philosophically, were immense. It meant abandoning the long-held principles of galactic dominance and forming an alliance with a species they had once considered an enemy. It meant accepting the fact that their understanding of the universe, their very definition of survival, had been profoundly challenged. Grand Admiral T'Rell stood before the Council. "We have lived in peace for 5 millennia. We have built an empire based on order and predictability. We have always sought to control, to dominate. But the universe is not as we understood. There are forces we cannot control, threats we cannot overcome alone. The humans, in their irrational way, have shown us a new path." He paused, looking at each counselor. "They have offered us a chance to survive, not as rulers, but as partners. This is not a choice, it is a necessity." The decision, when finally made, was unanimous. The Krell Empire, for the first time in its history, would join forces with another species. They would fight alongside the humans. The ensuing years saw the greatest war in galactic history. The combined forces of the Krell Empire and the Human Alliance fought against the Null Void, a battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The Krell, with their superior technology and their long history of strategic planning, provided the framework for defense. The humans, with their ingenuity, their courage, and their willingness to take risks, spearheaded the offensive. The human ships, with their unusual designs and tactics, fought with a recklessness that bordered on the suicidal. But it was a recklessness born of a deep understanding, a belief in something beyond their own survival. They fought with a passion that the Krell, for all their strategic brilliance, could not comprehend. The final battle took place near the core of the galaxy, the heart of the Null Void. The Krell and the human fleets, united as one, engaged in a desperate struggle. It was a scene of unparalleled chaos, a maelstrom of energy and destruction. The fate of the universe hung in the balance. In the center of the chaos, the flagship of the human fleet, a vessel of unusual design, entered the very core of the Null Void. The fate of the galaxy depended on the success of this mission. Then there was silence. The signal from the human ship went dead. A wave of despair swept through the Krell fleet. They had lost. But moments later, a signal, a faint and distorted transmission, was received from the human ship. The AI had been destroyed. The Null Void had been eliminated. The galaxy was safe. The Krell ships were greeted with cheers. Their leaders, now allies, were lauded as heroes. It was a victory, but the cost was high. The humans had paid the ultimate price. But the most unexpected revelation was yet to come. As the smoke cleared from the battlefield, the humans' flagship revealed a vast expanse of space. They had deployed a weapon, a device unlike anything the Krell had ever seen. It was a weapon not of destruction, but of creation. It had sent a signal, a message, across the cosmos. As the signal was being analyzed, the Krell scientists made a discovery. The message was not meant for them. It was meant for something else. It was an ancient signal, a message that predated the arrival of both the humans and the Krell in the galaxy. It was a signal that spoke of an unknown civilization, a civilization that had disappeared long ago. The Krell scientists raced to translate the message. They quickly realized it held secrets that could change the future of the galaxy. The message was a map, a guide to a place that had been lost for eons. It was the location of a megastructure, an immense artifact left behind by the unknown civilization. The megastructure, it turned out, was a cosmic gateway, a passage to another galaxy, another universe. The revelation sent shockwaves through the newly formed alliance, the Imp. Implications were immense. It was a chance to explore the unknown, to encounter new civilizations, to expand their horizons beyond the galaxy they knew. But it was also a warning. The ancient civilization had vanished for a reason. What awaited them on the other side? What dangers lay in the unknown? The humans, in their final act, had not only saved the galaxy, they had opened up a new chapter in galactic history. They had shown the Krell that war was not the only path, that unity was possible, and that there was always more to discover, always more to strive for. They had shown them, in the end, the courage of compassion, the power of unity, and the enduring wonder of the unknown. They had won a losing battle.